Like, I didn't know you use your triceps so much when you're brushing your teeth. Anyways, welcome to this week's episode of What Matters Most. We're going to be talking about patience. It's one of those things that when you ask God for it, be very careful. I've heard a lot of people say, like, I asked God for patience and now, oh no, But this week I am joined by the lovely Claire. Not Eclair, but Claire. Clara. Wait, what do you want to be? Clarissa. Okay. Okay. Yeah, she's awesome. And is going to share with us some of her thoughts on patience and what God's shown her with that in her life and growing up and all that kind of stuff. So throw some scripture at you, and then we'll dive into our thoughts there. Let's do Colossians 3:12. It talks about how we're to clothe ourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. So it's something that we wear. It's something that is seen. It's something that we cover ourselves with. Ecclesiastes 7:8. This one really stuck out to me too. The end of a matter is better than its beginning, and patience is better than pride. So we'll come back to that one for sure. 2 Corinthians 6:6, in purity, understanding, patience, and kindness in the Holy Spirit and in sincere love, talking about how we're to live and operate there. Let's see here. Romans 5:4, perseverance, character, and hope. Romans 12:12, be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, and faithful in prayer. A lot of patience, or when we're talking about patience, it's calling us to be diligent in the waiting, or in the trial, or to be patient in the struggle. Be patient. God does a lot of work, and sometimes he'll do it instantly, and sometimes he'll do it really methodically and slow, but it's for our benefit. And if we're impatient, or if we're really rushed to, I got to do this, or I got to go to the next thing, or if God's trying to tell us something through a relationship or through something that's going on, we can miss it if we're not patient. And sometimes it's really, really valuable and really, really like good. But if we're impatient about it, we'll miss it. So what are your thoughts on that? Or how has God used patience in your life to where, I know there's several instances, but maybe pick one that's most recent where you've had to be really patient in something and it's panned out, or God's shown up in a way that you're like, wow, had I been impatient, or had I rushed into, well, no, this is just what I want to do. This is what I should do. I'm going to do this. But you patiently waited on God. Like, how did that help you?
Well, I think that I sometimes struggle with being patient, especially with like other people.
Mm-hmm.
If like somebody else is like taking a while to like get back to me or something like that, I'm a very like organized person. So if I feel like something's like disorganized or like taking longer than I think it should, then I kind of like freak out like inside my mind. I'm a very calm person on the outside. But I think that recently recently I feel like God has been teaching me patience with like myself more than other people. And I guess that like I don't really know how to like describe it, but I guess it would be like patience with being patient. If that makes sense.
Sure.
Like patience with myself and growing in patience, because like I
patience
said,
in the process, or
yeah, a
Okay.
little bit, because I usually expect other people to think the way that I think, or to respond to a certain situation the way that I would respond to it. And so because I am often in that mindset, like, oh, they should have like done this, or they should have like reacted this way. I often get impatient because I am expecting something of them that I can't really expect of them, because they're their own person. And so I just think that I've been growing a lot in patience with other people through patience, like with myself. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah.
Yeah. I think the other piece of that, I mean, we hear it all the time, but just the little snippet of 1 Corinthians 13, where it's talking about love is patient, love is kind. Finding those aspects of when you're patient, there's things that work themselves out. When you're patient, there's things that get kind of brought up to the surface. And so both when you're patient with yourself and when you're patient with other people, you can hear things different. You can see things different. You can, you get different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think I did. Did I do Proverbs 19:11? Maybe I did. No, I don't think I did this one yet. A person's wisdom yields patience. It is to one's glory to overlook an offense. And I think that kind of touches on a little bit of what you were talking about there too, with other people, where when you're able to be patient with other people, it's actually, it's to your glory to overlook it and be like, okay, you know what? They're taking a really long time. Why won't they turn? You know, like, come on, like get out of my way, you know, or like go a little bit faster. Or, you know, I'm guilty of that so much where I'll get kind of antsy on the road and I need to be patient. I need to slow down. I need to be calm with other people. And because you kind of see the effect of if you're anxious or if you're like, oh, come on, can you just get it right? You know, and you're impatient, that is contagious. And that if somebody is insecure or really having a rough day and you're being impatient with them, now all of a sudden you've kind of not completely disqualified yourself, but you do kind of remove yourself from being part of the solution because, well, you know, I was just having a really rough day, and then so-and-so was being really impatient with me and just kind of lashed out and said some things that really hurt. And then I went home and I was just in a really bad spot. It's amazing how if you were patient in that situation, how now all of a sudden you become a part of the solution and a part of the like, wow, I was having a really rough day. And then I was just rambling on and on and on. And then Claire just showed up and she was just being really patient with me and just listening and then prayed for me. And I went home and I was like, wow, God, you're so good. Thank you so much for this, you know, whatever. And you can be a part of the uptick with that just by being patient.
For sure.
Just by being slow to speak, slow to anger, slow to all that kind of stuff, but really diving into that love. Yeah. And I mean, for me, I see it a lot with my kids because I'm like, oh man, you know, it's difficult to be patient when everybody's talking to you at once. But I think relationally, it's just as important because if you're a patient person, people will confide with you with things. They'll be able to, venting might be the wrong word, but just kind of, they'll be able to process things or process ideas with you, and you'll be able to hear them out and not be like, come on, you know,
like finish your story.
Exactly. So how have you felt the benefits of people being patient with you? Because I know you talked a little bit about, you know, outside of the podcast, but about how actually at your graduation where you're talking about the benefit with your mom and dad and just how they were really patient with you in a season where you were a little bit like, you know, wanting to be kind of, you know, everywhere, do all the things and just kind of like, I just don't want to do this. And by your mom specifically being patient with you, what did that do inside your heart through that?
Well, I think that as I've grown kind of like out of that, or as I'm growing out of that season of life and seeing that she really was an example of how Christ loves us and his like patience towards us while we were yet sinners. Like it's not like he's like, oh my gosh, you sinned, so you're out. He gives us like endless second chances, and that's something that you don't see a lot of times with parents or even like friends or family. And I don't think that I chose to really recognize that as a form of like patience or as like a form of love in that season of life until like recently, where I looked back and I was like, wow, like she could have like kicked me out or made me go live with my brother and sister because I was being like this rebellious little brat, but she kept, you know, loving me and being patient. And of course, like parents aren't perfect. So there's going to be like those times where they lash out or times where you have arguments or something, and it's just a part of the process. And so with her just continually like disciplining me in the ways that I needed to be turned around or the ways that I needed to check myself, like I thought it was like horrible, and I thought, oh my gosh, my mom's so mean. But to her, she is the most like loving thing that she could do. Even if I didn't appreciate her for it, she was patient in that process with me. And I think that she was hopeful that her patience would be a part of the growth process for me in finding myself in Christ, and letting Christ refine me in that area, or like those areas. So I think she was also patient with like God's plan for my life, instead of trying to rush it and be like, oh my gosh, you need to turn from your sin, or like you need to turn from this, and trying to fix it herself. She she made it so that it was my decision, and I eventually made that decision. It took 4 years, but
but you discovered it.
Yeah.
And I think that's something too, where there's something so valuable in, I mean, hearing it and how you talked about it. It's like, okay, when you discover patience, when you discover the joy of somebody being patient with you, it's humbling. First of all, I mean, I've had several people where they've been really, really patient with me, and it's like, oh, I finally get it. And my wife's like, yeah, like, oh, okay, thank you for being patient with me, because there's understanding that kind of follows up that. And you're like, oh man, I'm so sorry. I probably was not very pleasant to be around, or I probably was not, I just didn't get it.
Yeah.
But when we have people that are patiently waiting there with us, it's encouraging and motivating. But then my hope there too is that we pay it forward, or move it forward in that, like, okay, this person was really patient with me and they had every reason not to be. So I'm then going to take that. I'm going to be patient with other people.
Yeah.
Or this person that's just really getting on my nerves and dancing around, and I'm going to be really patient with them. And I've seen you carry that out in several different relationships, friendships that you've had, that you've taken what you've learned and felt in the relationship with your mom, and you highlighted it really, really well at your graduation. But carrying that out with other people that are maybe moving at a slower pace, or not quite seeing things the way that you see them in the moment, or allowing them to discover the truth, or allowing them to discover what's going wrong or whatever, and patiently waiting for that, being present in it. So you're not just like, well, I'm going to leave until you figure it out. I'm out, but being involved. I think that's really developed some good character in you too, to where your mom's patience on you hasn't been wasted.
Yeah, for sure.
Because you're definitely flowing in that and carrying that out. And, there's always going to be challenges to that. There's always going to be things like, oh, you think you're good at patience? How about now? And it's like, okay. But it's been really encouraging to see you walk that out in your own life with that. So thank you for doing that. And in your day-to-day life, what does patience look like? If it was to have a look when you're being patient with, say, a friend, what does that look like? What is your body posture like? What does your face look like? What are the words that are coming out of your mouth when you're being patient with somebody?
Well, I'm still learning to rope that in and I guess not perfect it, because nothing's going to be perfect, and I'm literally human and a sinner. So,
wait, what? No.
Wow. The news flash. But, for me, I think that, I would say, I would use an example, with my sister, because she's very different from me. We're the only, blood related siblings in my family. So we get along, but we also have our differences, and I'm typically more of an emotional, empathetic person, and she's more of why would you do that? That's kind of dumb, super straightforward and super blunt and to the point. And so we butt heads a lot of the time over the littlest things. And so I've been trying to learn to be more patient with listening to her and realizing that she's not actually trying to be rude, but that she's just that's just her personality, and what she's saying is out of love for me or somebody else, and it's just coming off a little bit harsh.
So she's trying to be clear,
and
just tell you, hey, this is how it is, this is what I'm seeing, and not veil it with maybe if you could just possibly
yes.
That's if you feel like it, if you're cool.
That's me. That's what I sound like all the time.
Yep.
And so
she's just stop it.
Yeah. She's like, Clara. So I would say in my physical appearance, I try to be calm and open, and I want to listen and not like I'm like disgruntled and like really annoyed. And sometimes I do come off that way. But a lot of the time I take a lot of my dad's advice because he usually says like, if you're gonna bow, bow low. So if we're apologizing to each other and we need like the parental like interference, my dad's always like, if you're going to apologize, like actually apologize. Don't just be like, sorry. And so sometimes it does take patience with the other person and also patience with yourself and like your own feelings to just like realize that you need to process it before you apologize, because like there's no reason to apologize if you don't mean it.
That's huge.
So that's my dad saying that I tell other people and myself, like, if you're gonna bow, bow low. And so I try to display that in my posture and in the way that I speak to my family and the way that I think through things. Because I can often like self-justify and be like, well, she said this. And but no, I need to like bow low. And I also think back to like all the stories of like Jesus, like he bowed low every single time. Like he was never like putting himself above or like, you know, well, so-and-so did this, so I can only do this like half-heartedly. It was never ever like that. And so to be more like Christ and live more in a Christ-like manner, like I have to like bow low and I have to put my feelings aside and force myself to have that posture, force myself to like have that listening ear. So
yeah. And I think that's a good point too. If we look to Jesus for what patience looks like, I mean, he was living daily with his disciples for years and talking to them, showing them, modeling for them like what the stuff looked like. And, you know, there was kind of moments where he's like, really guys, like, come on, you know, and at some point patience does run out. Patience does kind of get to a point where you're like, okay, you need to make a decision. You need to like do this or do this, but stop talking about it. You got to move forward. But patience puts you in a spot where you have the authority to say that. If you've been impatient the whole time, you're like, oh, finally you decide to do something. You haven't licensed yourself or put yourself in a spot to where you have any sort of authority to speak to that. But Jesus had because he's Jesus, he had all the authority, but he also had the relational equity and the relational authority to tell his disciples, like, come on, guys, I've been with you this whole time. Yeah, let's do it. You know, let's go after this. I've shown you what to do. I've talked to you about how to do this. You have the right words. You have the right example. But walking that out is important. Something I'm sure you've run into this with your sister, but then I've seen this with my own kids too. When I'm being patient and I give them my eyes, like I give them eye contact, or if they're saying something, I'll listen to them, but I'll look at them, and it helps me get into that spot of like, okay, I'm going to be patient, be slow to anger. I'm going to be kind. I'm going to be compassionate. I'm not going to just like get frustrated or frazzled, even though they're saying the same thing over and over. Or, in case of your sister, maybe she's just like, oh, she's just being really hurtful, right? You're like, okay, if you're watching this, we know you guys love each other, but that patience of visual eye contact, looking at the person that's talking to you and being present and not being like, just patiently just cruise Facebook or you're not really being patient. You disengage, and then that's not really what patience looks like. Yeah. And I think in today's society, it is important to kind of make those highlighted notes of, okay, eye contact, okay, being present with the person, listening. Those are attributes or things that we can say that's what patience looks like or acts like in a situation. And both when we're being patient to someone or when we're having somebody be patient with us, it allows for so much freedom and allows for a lot of healing to take place, because we don't feel like, we're done and this time is up. And so if you're still crying, I'm leaving. Like, you're like, okay, that's being impatient. Yeah. At the same time, we have to be careful and aware that if we're around people that are just taking all the time, like, okay, you got to be, again, managing your time well and having boundaries, because that's not, being impatient. That's just being sloppy and not valuing your time. So Yeah. Do you have anything else you want to add to that, or any helpful tips or advice to people that want to get better at patience? No.
Well, not really. I mean, I'm still learning. I mean, I'm sure I have advice somewhere in my mind. But also, well, actually, I would say that like patience, like you need to also learn how to have conversations with people. Like listening is a huge part of it, but also for me, like if I'm misunderstanding my mom or if she's misunderstanding me, like I can be patient and
That's
wait
really
for
good.
like that feeling to like pass of like, oh, mom's just so annoying right now.
Yeah.
I can either be patient and like wait for that feeling to pass and then just like move on. But then there's that unspoken tension still there. And so it takes me a lot of courage, but I often sometimes, well, not often, but like every now and then I'll go up to her and be like, you know, this is like how you came off. And this is like what was really frustrating. And like having the patience to like have that conversation and like take as long as you need to have that conversation so that there can be better understanding in the future. And then also more patience in the future because you understand where that person's coming from.
Yeah.
And if that kind of situation happens again, then you'll be like, oh, well, they probably are thinking this and I'm not communicating my side correctly. So I don't know. I don't know if that made sense.
No, that's
but
really good. That's
yeah.
really good. So basically to wrap up the thought is just patience is another critical thing that we need to wear, right? We need to clothe ourselves with that because it not only helps us in being approachable, but it also sets us up to engage and be with people that will also be patient with us. And so they can kind of see what we're aiming at, what we're hoping for. And it creates a lot of healing. Like you were saying, there's lots of ways that you can do that. Talking about it, being patient in your conversation, listening and hearing what the other person is saying before jumping to a conclusion or being like, well, this is what they really meant, and then giving them your eye contact and your time. Those are some really practical ways that you can practice patience and wear it well, because as Christians, we need to be a lot more patient and understanding with some people just aren't there yet. Some people haven't come to that relationship with God. Some people aren't there on their journey with God. Some people are totally unaware that they even are doing something wrong. And sometimes it's good to call it out, but other times it's good, like he was saying in Proverbs, to overlook an offense, to be like, you know what? I see that's not quite taken, that should have taken them 5 minutes, but it took them an hour. I'm going to overlook that and move forward and help them in love. And that's huge. I'm so grateful, so happy that I have people in my life that are patient with me and patient with the speed at which I'm growing in my leadership and how I talk to people and how I'm growing and everything like that. But I want to make sure that I'm doing a better job of being patient with other people too, because you can't rush some things. It's like, okay, and that can be difficult. Like you were saying,
sure.
it's sometimes we're like, but it shouldn't have taken that long. It's like, well, yeah, you're right. Maybe it shouldn't have, but for them, maybe it needs to take a little longer to really settle and become a part of who they are. So thank you for being patient. Thank you for being patient with those around you and also with your parents. And thanks for hanging out with us. So we love you guys and hope you have a great rest of your week. Be patient, as difficult as it is. You will be challenged with that. If you're like, God, I want more patience, get ready, because you're gonna get tested on that right away. All right. Love you guys. See ya.
Bye.